Hey kiddos, hope everybody's great. I'm doing great. Yesterday we looked at this idea of pro and anti-natalist policies. So natal just means baby. So pro-natalist means a government wants more babies. Anti-natalist means a government wants less babies. Um, and that can be really tricky because, as we said, the decision to have a kid or not have a kid is a very profound and personal one. It can be very hard for the government to influence that, particularly in a democracy. We'll talk about the one child policy today. But sorry, I got to spell it out here. So, pro-natalist, you want more babies. What do? You have to make it easier to have kids. So, free childcare, paid maternity leave, paid paternity leave. Um, Free or tax breaks, right? Paying less in taxes for every kid you have. France, who said, has a kind of like a small army of government nannies that help young families with the challenges of parenthood. So all of these things can encourage people to have babies. We talked about Russia's baby lottery, where they, give prizes out for people who have kids. So pro-natalist would be, Russia is a good example. The United States, we give tax credits for kids. Basically, all those European countries who are struggling keeping up their populations, they're pro-natalist. Anti-natalist, people that want less babies, well, best thing you can do is make sure all your girls and young women are educated. Can provide access to birth control and family planning methods. We do that in the United States. We don't want teenagers to have kids, so we have free condoms in schools, right? And what were some other? Oh, and in more religious societies, they teach abstinence, not to have sex. Countries that could be anti-natalist, perhaps China's obviously the most famous with the one-child policy, but India is making a lot of efforts to slow down its population growth because it's already over 1 billion. So I hope that covers the pro and anti-natalist. Today we're going to go in depth on the most famous anti-natalist on the one-child policy and really what a disaster it was. So we've seen this map before, the cartogram, where the size of the country represents its population. China 1, India 2, US 3, Indonesia 4, Brazil, I believe, is 5. Going down through, who else? Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria. These are all some of the largest populations in the world. All right. So it's kind of crazy to think about, but roughly 1 out of every 5 human beings is Chinese. All right. 20% of the world lives in China. 20% of human beings live in China. All right. This map kind of blows my mind. So China has provinces, like we have 50 states. They have provinces. Same thing. It's just a different word. Actually, most countries call them provinces. So here are the provinces in China, and these country names. This means that the population of this one province is equal to the entire population of the other country. So Sichuan, this province in China, has the same population as the entire country of Germany, entire population of Philippines, right? So you can just kind of see, like, all of the UK would fit into this. The population is equal to this one province. So you can just see what we're talking about with how large this population is. Here's China's population growth. Low, 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 low. Starts climbing up a bit. Then we got the Industrial Revolution, sky high. All right. Right now, I think it's about 1.4 billion, close to 1.4 billion. All right, and this is going to require us to go back a little bit into global history. I don't know if you remember Mao Zedong. He was the communist leader of China. He turned China communist in 1949. And he really promoted Chinese families to have lots of kids. He thought you needed lots of big, strong communist families to make the country strong. And China had a lot of enemies, so they wanted this big, strong population to defend itself. And you can see China's population pyramid in 1970. Stage 2 country. By far the widest population bar are the babies. All right? Now, this continued for the rest. This continued for the rest of Mao's tenure as dictator. He died in 1976, and scientists within China began freaking out about overpopulation. The term is carrying capacity. Carrying capacity is how much people can a place support. Like, do you have enough water and resources to support people? So some places have a higher carrying capacity. Like New York has a higher carrying capacity than the Sahara Desert, right? We can just support more people here because we have access to resources and water, all right? And these scientists get together and say, we must change our population trajectory rapidly and dramatically. And that's where they came up with the one-child policy. And this dude, Deng Xiaoping, he was the dictator that took over after Mao. He's the one that implements the one-child policy. And it began in 1980. So I was 1 year old, okay, just to give you a sense, all right? Now, what was this? I think there's a lot of like speculation that the Chinese government was going around killing babies if you were the second baby. They would not do that. They were not killing babies, but they did violate people's rights. They forced women, primarily women, to get sterilized, right? Which means they can never have babies again. If you had a second child, you could be fined. Sometimes they would. You could get fired from your job, particularly if you worked for the government. And kind of socially ostracized. And they would put pressure on you to get abortions. They would make it difficult for you to get loans. They would take away your retirement funds. All right. So there were lots and lots of ways the government pressured people to have one child. Okay. There were some exceptions. It wasn't everybody. So if you're an ethnic minority, so most of China is what's called Han Chinese. Han is the ethnicity. But there are a lot of different ethnicities in China. There are Mongolians and Tibetans and a group called Uyghurs. They allowed them to have more than one child because they didn't want to make it seem like their ethnic group was dominating another ethnic group or trying to like eliminate another ethnic group by not allowing them to have babies. If your first child was disabled, they let you have another one. If you were living overseas, like if you were, I don't know, a Chinese citizen living in America, you could have more than one. And so there were some exceptions to it. Generally speaking, people actually supported it, but it's hard because like the government was trying to brainwash people. It worked. Here's the fertility rate, right? It goes down dramatically because of the one-child policy, all right? But what it also did is it screws up the dependency ratio because now you don't have kids to support the older generation, and it screws up the sex ratio because of a 1,000-year-old system of patriarchy under Confucianism. Men were valued more than women in China, and so many families got selective abortions. They got pregnant and found out it was a girl, they would have the child aborted and try again for a boy. That became such an issue that they actually made sonograms illegal. Where like they put the little scope on the mother's belly, you can determine the sex of the child. That became illegal because there were so many selective abortions. But China's still dealing with the fallout, as we're going to talk about. Here again, declining fertility rates from about the average woman having 6 kids to today, it's less than 2, right? But again, I think this could have been achieved without violating people's rights. I think if you just would have sent all the women to school, make sure everybody gets educated, you would have seen similar results. Here's the idea of selective abortions. Here's the sex ratio of different countries. Sorry, this computer is so sensitive, right? So look at China here. Way more. The higher it is, the more boys than girls you have. China outpaces by far, has the most skewed sex ratio. There are millions and millions of men, more men in China than women. And that's potentially dangerous because that means these men there's nobody to marry. So you're going to have a whole cohort, a generation of unmarried single men. And generally speaking, that's like potentially a dangerous population in a society, right? You want men to have obligations to family. and these men aren't. And in some parts of China, in the countryside, there's like it's a serious issue of kidnapping. Like men are kidnapping women to take as their brides, because there simply aren't enough women to marry all the men. All right, dependency ratio. How many people are too old or too young to work compared to those who can work? Well, the one-child policy has created what's called a 4-to-1 dependency problem. For every one child, right, they have 2 parents and 4 grandparents. So one person potentially could be responsible for taking care of 6, right? By the time the parents retire, you might have 6 people that you're responsible for taking care of, totally screwing up the dependency ratio. All right. The other thing, I mean, think about what it means to have one. If everybody's an only child, nobody has a cousin, right? It's like a breakdown of the family. Nobody has an aunt or an uncle. It's kind of wild to think about that. Here's consequences. China is aging rapidly because they don't have the babies to offset it. So the average age of people in China is quickly going to be higher than that of the United States. Fertility rate now is below replacement level. And the dependency ratio is screwed up. Number of working age adults to support each person over 60. It's been going down, down, down. We have less people working to support more people retire. So not that long ago, I forget when it was, a few years ago, the current leader of China, Xi Jinping, he saw what a disaster this had become, and he relaxed the policy. Basically got rid of the one-child policy, saying, go ahead, have babies. We need them. And everybody was kind of expecting this baby boom where everybody was going to go out and have a second child, or maybe even second and third child. But that hasn't happened. The people aren't having more babies. Why? Well, because China has developed rapidly and people now live in cities. Women are getting educated. The cost of an apartment in Beijing or Shanghai is at the same, if not more expensive than in New York City. People can't afford large families there now. And so China's kind of stuck with this problem that was created by the one-child policy. So I know it's a topic of interest to a lot of you guys. There's a dope movie on this. I think it's on Amazon Prime. It's called One Child Nation, that explores the history and effects of the one-child policy. This is the cover of it. This is what you'd see on Amazon. And I really like it because look who's been cut out, right? The girl's not there. So this family chose to have the boy, and maybe the girl was a victim of selective abortion. If you guys watch this, I'll take your word for it. It'll be honor system. Just shoot me an email telling me that you watched it and what you thought of it, and I'll give you extra credit. All right, kiddos. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day.